Hey, this is Jason Kleberg from the Force 5 podcast, a show that forces a guest to come up with a movie-themed top 5 list topic, and then we reveal our picks on air. Top 5 heist films, top 5 tearjerkers, top 5 movie dogs. Every show you'll be asking yourself, what would be on my list? Guests include directors, screenwriters, actors, podcasters, musicians, authors, and even a professional wrestler. Subscribe to the Force 5 podcast, and you won't just be a listener, you'll be a list nerd. The Force 5 podcast, available wherever you're listening now.
Do you love movies? So do I. What's up, y'all? It's KB, and I love movies, inviting you to listen to The Conversation, a film podcast where passion meets perspective and opinion. From the old school to the new, I invite a guest on to discuss the movies that thrill us, challenge us, break our hearts, or even blow our minds. There's always new episodes dropping wherever you get your podcasts. So join the conversation. We don't just watch movies. We love talking about them too. The Conversation with KB Loves Movies, a part of Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network.
Welcome to Wake Up Heavy, my weird dad's weird podcast about weird movies.
Hello and welcome. This is Mark, and you are listening to Wake Up Heavy Recollections of Horror. And today is the second in a special series for Women in Horror Month. And I will be talking about Karyn Kusama's 2015 thriller, The Invitation. And I'm pretty sure I pronounced her name incorrectly on the episode for Slumber Party Massacre when I mentioned that I would be talking about this one. Pretty sure I pronounced her last name correctly, but mispronounced her first name. And then another correction from that episode, I mentioned that Michelle Bauer was in Sleepover Party.
That doesn't sound right.
I meant Slumber Party. And it was Brink Stevens. And I kind of knew it as I said it and dismissed it. And I should always go with your gut. And I checked later and I thought, oh, crap. So I corrected it on the show notes, and I am correcting it now. And again, don't hesitate to call out mistakes. I've had this discussion before. I won't go over it again too much, but I'm not perfect. I'm not an industry person. I will mispronounce names like Renee Auberjonois. Ooh, that was pretty good. I don't mind being kindly and politely told that I may have gotten something wrong. It does happen from time to time. And the third mistake I made was stating that this was written and directed by Karyn Kusama. She directed it, and it was written by two other guys. I think I kind of caught myself when I mentioned Jennifer's Body that she also directed, and I claimed that she wrote, but no, she is the director on these two films. And just briefly, I did watch Jennifer's Body fairly recently. It's kind of gotten a resurgence in popularity, and I think it's mainly because of its feminist leanings, which is, unusual for horror in a lot of cases. And so I sat down and watched it, and I didn't really care for it much. It's not a bad movie. I'm not really sure what it was. I will most likely give it another shot. It was written by Diablo Cody. My wife and I really liked Juno when that first came out. I don't know if I could watch it again. It's that kind of witty, snarky, snippy dialogue that gets played out after a while. So I think that was my main issue with Jennifer's Body. But Kusama's latest film is called Destroyer, and it is with Nicole Kidman, and it is supposed to be pretty amazing. So I am very much looking forward to that. Now, my history with the Invitation goes back a couple of years. I remember reading about it online and thinking that it sounded like it was right up my alley. And it contains one of my favorite little horror subgenre tropes, if I can call it that. and I don't want to give too much away because I on these short things that I'm doing for this series and for stuff like the Patreon and even the Why Didn't I Rent This, I know that I spoil the movies in the main episodes, but I try to avoid it a little bit more in these. So I don't want to give away too much on this, but I was excited when I read about it to see it. Now, when I first saw it, I liked it. I thought it was well made, well acted, and the story was interesting, but I kind of came away with a very negative reaction, and I'll explain why. This movie ratchets up my anxiety level to the nth degree. And here's a little basic synopsis of the film to kind of explain why this happens. The story is about Will and Kira going to a dinner party for his ex-wife and new husband or new boyfriend. And Will and his ex, Eden, haven't really spoken or seen each other in a couple of years.
Nobody seen her?
I ran into her and David at a supermarket. A little bit after that, I heard they disappeared.
And they met in the grief group?
Mm-hmm. Well, we were still married.
They split up because of the death of their son. And of course, they both had a very difficult time with it, and it ended up destroying their marriage, and they both have really, really, really deep-seated issues because of this. So this is bringing back all these old friends together for dinner party and an announcement of some sort. And on the way there, Will and Kira hit a coyote on the way up. I don't know, it's the Hollywood Hills or Silver Lake or somewhere, some trendy part of LA. They've hurt the coyote so badly that Will ends up having to kill it with a tire iron. That's not kind of what brings on the anxiety, but you kind of get the idea. This night is already headed in a bad direction. And we find out after a while why all these old friends have been invited to the house. Eden and her new beau, David, I think his name is, went on this retreat in Mexico and discovered this great new philosophy about letting go of pain. What brings out my anxiety is basically the social situation that they're all in. You couldn't pay me $1 million to go to a party at an ex's house with her new beau. And, this is something that I would avoid like the plague. And at every turn, there is something there that sets Will off. And of course, he is having flashbacks of their time together, their time with their son, what happens to their son. But beside all of that, it's just uncomfortableness after uncomfortableness after uncomfortable situation. And there were a half a dozen times where I would have been, get me the fuck out of here. So, long story short, that was all set up to explain that negative impression I kind of had the first time I watched it. It hit my particular social weaknesses at a really personal level. Being an introvert and not being socially outgoing, I was like, oh my God, you just leave people, get in your car and go. Of course, there would be no movies, so we can't do that. I kind of realized this pretty quickly, and I watched it a second time, not too far after watching it the first time, and enjoyed it a lot more for the movie itself. It's really well made, really well directed. The acting is great. It's got a couple of my favorite actors in it. Will is played by Logan Marshall Green, who many people know from The OC, and I totally forgot he was on that, as Trey Atwood, what's his name's dickhead brother. He was in a really great series that I was very saddened to see go, called Quarry, that was on Showtime, I think.
That doesn't sound right.
I think Cleo was trying to tell me it was actually on Cinemax. Really, really cool series, and he was great in it. And I just watched the other day Upgrade, because it popped up on one of our channels, and it is way better than I expected. I saw the trailer when I went to see either Hereditary or A Quiet Place and thought, ooh, that looks really cool. And then I kind of read up a little bit more, and then I thought, I don't know. I figured I'd give it a shot, and I really, really enjoyed it. And then the other actor who's a favorite and has been since I saw him in Fargo is John Carroll Lynch. Don't like him so much in this movie, but he's a great actor. And then many of the other actors and actresses I recognized from TV and other movies. The other guy, the new husband or whoever he is on the recent Netflix show, The Haunting of Hill House. He's one of the main kind of sibling that writes the book about Hill House and all that. And one nice thing about the cast and characters is that it is a very diverse group, and I have a feeling that was a conscious effort on the part of the filmmakers, and it makes for a much more interesting movie. So it was really interesting this time when I watched it. I liked it even more this third time, and it was because I was really paying attention and trying to catch all the little subtle clues that could catch and think, oh, I know what's going on here. And I caught them a lot more easily, of course, knowing what the outcome already was. One thing I did notice was that it's basically like a bottle episode of a TV show, a way for shows to kind of do a cheap episode where they're in one spot the whole time. Most TV shows do them, but it just takes place in this house, and that is it. Other than their drive up there at the beginning, everything happens in this house. You know, that's great for the budget of the movie, but it also adds to that tension, and it ends up being fairly important to the story itself. And other than these old friends that have gathered together, we have two intruders, and John Carroll Lynch plays Pruitt, one of them, and Lindsay Burge that plays Sadie. And these are people that they met at this retreat. I kind of noticed this time that her name was very important. And again, I don't want to go too deeply into that, but think of famous Sadies that you've heard of. Okay, screw it. I don't know why I'm being so evasive. They think they belong to a cult, and that's not really it. I'm going to forget about the spoilery thing. I'm not going to give away the ending, though, because that does need to be seen without any extra information. What I wanted to kind of talk about were the instances throughout that basically would have made me get the hell out of there. There are numerous cases of this, but what it all kind of boils down to, and why Will and Kira don't leave, is because of this history, because he had a child with this woman. That child died unexpected.
That doesn't sound right.
Unexpectedly and tragically. And I think there's even indication that Eden tried to commit suicide herself. So she was in the grief group, and that is where she met David. When Will and Kira first arrive and are kind of being not introduced, since everybody knows each other, but everybody's saying their hellos, Will takes a peek down the hall and sees Sadie in the bathroom at the end of the hall without any pants on. For me, that would be kind of a signal that something's not right here. Maybe not enough to make me leave, but I would be, I'm not sure what the word is, but on guard after that, I guess. Of course, they do their chit-chat, and Will seems to think that something is off about Eden. She's real smiley, kind of a disingenuous, happy, and at one point, we finally get down to why everybody is there, and they play a video. Right here is where I would be checking out already, because it's either going to be a pyramid scheme or it's going to be a religious tape, and we're going to get into this conversion.
They're in a cult.
No, stop. We're not in a cult.
I know plenty of people who do the invitation.
The tape itself is fairly disturbing. I was very aware of how uncomfortable Claire was. She and Will seem to be the only people that are bothered by any of this. They kind of make a joke about being converted even. And of course, Eden and David say, no, it's not a cult. It's not a religion. It's a science. It's about letting go of your pain, not letting it keep you down. At one point, Ben, Eden, and Will are in the kitchen. Eden is saying something like, you don't have to be in pain, or you don't have to be mad or sad, whatever, something like to that effect. And Ben says, that sounds crazy. And she flat out slaps him in the face. Why Ben doesn't turn heel and get out of there, I don't know. Will, again, who is, on edge this whole time, why he doesn't grab Kira and say, we're leaving now, I don't know. But, that's what drives me crazy. I get it. No movie without them staying there. But, oh, boy, it plays on my nerves so much. At one point, and I may be mixing up the timeline in here a little bit, I think after Pruitt shows up, David closes the door, he locks it, and he takes the key, and Will says, hey, why are you locking the door? He's already noticed that there are bars around all of the windows now that weren't there when he lived there, and he makes a point of saying, hey, look, if there's a fire or if something happens, how are we supposed to get out of here? And there's always an explanation for everything they do, even with the one kind of horror movie trope that's in here with the poor phone reception. It gets explained away as, they haven't had the company, their servers come up and install the modem, something to the effect of, yes, we know it's a problem, but we haven't fixed it yet. Of course, that comes into play later. That's just a modern contrivance that we just can't avoid. In movies these days, everybody has a phone in their pocket. You either have to set movies in the 80s or you have to find that loophole. It is probably the only real big kind of tropey part of the movie that, and they handle it fairly well, but it's just unfortunate that it even has to be dealt with. But them's the breaks, I guess. After a little while, someone else comes to the door, and when I was watching it this third time, I was thinking, who is that? I can't remember. I've seen it a couple times. I don't remember every point, every beat in the movie, which is nice because I was waiting for something to happen. David comes back in. He and I think Pruitt are out there talking to these people, and then they come back in and just say, oh, they were looking for a party. They're lost. And again, Will is on edge. He's noticing all these things. He often dismisses himself. He looks through the house, goes to his son's room. He goes outside. He's overwhelmed, obviously. And every time he kind of goes off on his own, he sees something else going on in the house. He sees Eden taking pills at one point. He discovers what those are. That leads to a whole confrontation. He sees David putting out a lantern and lighting it in their backyard, which will play into the movie at one point. The thing with Sadie and all this other stuff. At some point, they start playing a game called I Want. And what David wants everybody to do is just be totally honest and express exactly what they want. Of course, there's somebody who says that she wants Coke, the great Coke that he used to have. David was a drug addict. He had lost his wife. That's why he was in the grief group. And he went, down a spiral of drug addiction, etc. He gives her some. Somebody else says, I want to kiss so-and-so. And they kiss. And Pruitt says that he wants to talk about his wife. And he starts telling this lovely story about how they met. She was an artist, painted these amazing paintings. It ends up with him explaining how, in effect, he basically killed his wife. And of course, now everybody is just gobsmacked. And, he explains that he served his time, got out, joined this group, whatever it is, and how much better it's made him. And by now, Claire is done. Hallelujah. Somebody gets up to leave. Of course, they all try to get her to stay. Will is like, let her fucking leave. Why can't she leave? To placate him, David's like, oh, no, it's fine. She can leave. We just wish she would stay so we could all have a good time. She leaves, and Pruitt follows her out so that he can move his car, which is quote-unquote blocking hers. And then David asks Will to step aside so that he can talk to him alone.
I'm very happy you're here. It's so important to Eden and me. We chose you because you matter to us.
You chose me.
To be here tonight. But I don't know, man. You've been acting so suspicious of our hospitality. Frankly, it upsets me a little. I lock the door and you have a fit about it. Just now, my friend wants to move his car. You're standing by the window like you're going to catch him stealing something.
Yeah, so this is like opportunity number 10, where I would be, okay, thanks, David. Thanks, Eden. Lovely to see y'all. Adios. There's been this whole question running through. One of the girls' boyfriends or husband isn't there, and he's supposed to be there. It's Gina and Troy. One time when Will is outside, his phone finally kind of connects, and he sees he has a voicemail, and he plays it, and it's Troy stating that he had been there, had gotten there, forgotten the dessert he was supposed to bring, and was calling people to see if they could bring it, and he was so excited because he was early. And now Will is convinced that something is amiss. He asks, he flips out, asks where Troy is. He's already been here. He said he was here. He wasn't going to leave. And again, it's explained away. And calm down, Will. You're being paranoid. It's kind of a gaslight situation where everybody's just telling Will that he's not, he's over analyzing everything and being, it's a hard situation for him to be in. He hasn't been in the house since they broke up, all this stuff. And just kind of all these things, I would just have been spent and done and out of there and just an absolute mess. Will does finally flip out, and he is interrupted by an unexpected guest. And then that's when the shit really hits the fan, and I think it's where I'm going to go ahead and stop talking about it because it will get into spoilers, and I want everybody to run out and watch it on Netflix while it's still there. It's been there for a couple years and could drop off at any time, so get on it if you haven't seen it yet. Just want to mention again, the episode of Pick Up a Podcast I mentioned I was going to be on is out now, and if you search for Wake Up Heavy on iTunes, it should actually come up as one of the options. It's Pick Up a Podcast, or the network that he belongs to is called We Made This, so you could search for any of those. And I have it on my blog, actually. I've got a blog entry with the embedded player. You could always play it on there. Their host is Spreaker, so you could go to Spreaker and look up either We Made This or Pick Up a Podcast and give it a listen. And I am going to be doing very shortly here one of the Patreon episodes for February on The Witch Who Came from the Sea. And that will be up soon. I will, of course, announce that. And if you're a Patreon, only have one so far, but you should get notified that it's available. And I think that should do it. I am not sure what I will be talking about next week. If you have any suggestions for women in horror, let me know. It could be an actress who's done a bunch of horror movies. It could be a director. It could be just a film with strong female leads, whatever. I haven't decided yet. I've got a whole bunch of stuff still on my lists, and I'll peruse that and see what happens. All right, thank you so much for listening. Have a great rest of your week, and don't forget to wake up heavy.